Hi there, fourth grade. I just want to congratulate you on all your Imagine Math lessons that you passed, and I can't believe you guys are in the final two. That is awesome. Keep up the good work. I know that you will be champions. I know you will beat everyone in the United States. So now on to my video 2, the Lemonade War. We're here with Evan and his sister Jessie, and Evan's upset with Jessie because she's going to be in 4th grade with him this coming school year, and that makes him very upset. So I'm going to continue where I was yesterday. Jessie couldn't settle into that happy feeling, the one that usually came when she read Charlotte's Web and it said, "I dare say my trick will work and Wilbur's life can be saved." Instead, she kept noticing an unhappy feeling, tap, tap, tapping on her shoulder. And it wasn't the unhappy feeling that came from knowing that Charlotte was going to die on page 171. It was Evan. She couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. Jessie could only remember one other time that Evan had said, "I hate her," to her grandma. Grandma had been over and Evan needed help with his math homework. He had that frustrated, screwed up mouth look that sometimes got with math or spelling or writing reports. Mom called it his "he's gonna blow" look. But Grandma couldn't help him because it was all Greek to her. So Jessie had to show him how to do the problems. Well, she just sort of jumped in and did the problems for him. That was helping, wasn't it? Grandma had called her a genius girl, but Evan had ripped his paper in half and ran upstairs shouting, "I hate you," just before slamming his door. That was last year. Jessie rested the book on her stomach and stared at the ceiling. People were confusing. She'd rather do 100 math problems than try to figure out someone else's mixed up feelings any day of the week. That's why she and Evan got along so well. He'd just tell her straight out, "I'm mad at you because you ate last night's Rice Krispies treats and you ate the last one." And then she could say, "Sorry, hey, I've got a sunburst in my room. You want them? A starburst in my room. You want them?" And that would be great. Evan was a straight shooter. Not like the girls at school, the ones who had started that club. She rolled over onto her side to get away from those thoughts. Across the room, against the opposite wall, she noticed the 3 pieces of foam core her mom had bought for Jessie's Labor Day project every year. The Rotary Club sponsored a competition for kids to see who could come up with the best display related to the holiday. This was the first year Jessie was old enough to participate, and she had begged her mom to buy foam core and gel pens and fluorescent paper and special stickers for her and her display. She was determined to win the prize money, $100. But she hadn't been able to come up with a single idea that seemed good enough. So here it was, just 5 days before the competition, and the foam core was still completely blank. Jessie reached for her book. She didn't want to think about the girls at school, and she didn't want to think about the competition. She started reading again. Wilbur and Charlotte were at the fair, and Charlotte was beginning to show her age. Jessie read the words that Wilbur said to his best friend. "I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poorly, Charlotte. Perhaps if you spin a web and catch a couple of flies, you'll feel better." The second part didn't apply at all, but Jessie imagined herself saying the first line, "I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poorly, Evan." It sounded about right. At least it would show him that she was scared. Or that she cared, sorry. And Jessie knew that this was important when someone was feeling upset. That she did care. She decided to go downstairs and give it a try. She would do just about anything to get Evan back to the way he was before the letter. Jessie looked in the kitchen in the backyard. No Evan. She was halfway down the steps to the basement when she heard a noise coming from the garage. She opened the door and felt the full heat of the day on her skin. It was like some giant had blown his hot, stinky breath on her. In the garage, she found Evan and Scott Spencer. Weird, she thought. Evan doesn't even like Scott Spencer. They'd been on again, off again friends from kindergarten. But ever since Scott had purposely put Evan's bike helmet under the wheel of the Tresky's minivan so that Mrs. Tresky would run over it when she backed out, the friendship had definitely been off. Jessie looked from Evan to Scott and back again. Now she had no idea what to say. "I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poorly, Evan." Didn't seem to make much sense when Evan was obviously having fun with his friend. She tried to think of something else to say. All she could come up with, "What are you doing?" The boys were bent over a piece of cardboard. Evan was writing letters with a skinny red felt-tipped pen. The purple cooler was in the middle of the garage, and 2 plastic chairs were stacked on top of it. On top of the chair was a brown bag. "Nothing," said Evan, not looking up. Jessie walked over to the boys and peered over Evan's shoulder, and it said, "Lemonade, 50 cents. She said, "You spelled lemonade wrong." "Oh, it's an O, not an I." But she thought, "Oh good, a lemonade stand. My favorite thing to do." The boys didn't say anything. Jessie saw Evan's mouth tighten up. You want me to make the lemonade?" She asked. "Already made," said Evan. "I could decorate the sign," she said. "I'm good at drawing butterflies and flowers and things." Scott snorted. "Huh? We don't want to girl stuff like that on our sign." "Do you want to use my lockbox to keep the money in? It's got a tray with it, and it has separate compartments for all different coins." "Nope," said Evan, still working on the sign. "Well," she said, looking around, "I can clean the table for you." The small wooden table was still covered in black streaks. It was pushed up against the bikes. "We're not using it," said Evan. "But we always use the table for a stand," said Jessie. Evan pushed his face in her direction. "We don't want it." Jessie took a couple of steps back. Her insides felt runny, like a fried egg that hasn't cooked. She knew she should just go back into the house, but for some reason her legs wouldn't move. She stood still, her bare feet rooted to the cool cement. Scott whispered something to Evan, and the 2 boys laughed, low and mean. Jessie swayed toward the door, but her feet stayed planted. She couldn't stand it that Evan wanted to be with Scott, who was a real jerk, more than her. "Hey," she said, "I bet you need a change. I've got a ton." "You can have all my change, as long as you pay it back at the end of the day." "Don't need it," said Evan. "Yeah, you do," insisted Jessie. "You always need change, especially in the beginning. You'll lose sales if you can't make change." Evan capped the pen with a loud snap and stuck it in his pocket. "Scott's bankrolling us. His mom keeps a change jar, so we've got plenty." The boys stood up. Evan held a sign for Scott to read, turning his back on Jessie. "Awesome," said Scott. Jessie knew the sign was not awesome. The letters were too small and thin to read from a distance. Evan should have used a fat marker instead of a skinny felt-tipped pen. Everybody knew that. Lost my place. Oh, there weren't any pretty decorations to attract customers, and the word lemonade was spelled wrong. Why wouldn't Evan take a little help from her? She just wanted to help. Scott turned to her and said, "Are you really going to be in 4th grade this year?" Jessie's back stiffened. "Yep," she said. "Wow, that is so freaky." "It's not," she said, sticking her chin out. "It is too," said Scott. "I mean, you're a 2nd grader. How are you going to be a 4th grader? That's just messed up." Jessie looked at Evan, but he was busy taping the sign to the cooler. Lots of people skip grades, said Jessie. "It's not that big of a deal." "It's completely weird," said Scott. "I mean, you miss everything from a whole year. You missed the whole unit on Antarctica, and that was the best. And the field trip to the aquarium, and the thing where we sent letters all over the country. Remember that, Evan? You got that letter from Alaska. That was so cool." Evan nodded, but he didn't look up. "It's not a big deal," said Jessie again. Her voice stretched tightly like a rubber band. "It's like you miss a year of your life," Scott said. "It's like you're going to die a whole year earlier than the rest of us because you never had 3rd grade. Jessie felt cold and hot at the same time. Part of her wanted to yell, "That doesn't make any sense." But the other part of her felt so freakish, like Scott had just noticed she had 3 legs. Evan stood up and tossed the paper bag to Scott. He grabbed the plastic chairs with one hand. "Come on, let's go." He reached down to grab one handle of the cooler. Scott grabbed the other, and together they lifted it and began to walk out of the garage. "Hey, Evan," said Jessie, calling to their backs. "Can I come too?" "Nope," he said, without turning around. "Come on, please." "I can be a big help. I can do lots of things." "You're too young," he said sharply. "You're just a baby." The boys walked out. "You're just a baby." Jessie couldn't believe Evan had said that to her. After all the stuff they'd done together, and he was only 14 months older than she was. Hardly even a full year. She was about to yell back something really harsh. Something stinging and full of bite, like, "Oh yeah?" When she heard Scott say to Evan, "Man, I can't believe you have to be in the same class as your little sister. If that happened to me, I'd move to South America." "Yeah, tell me about it," replied Evan, crossing the street. The words died on Jessie's lips. She watched Evan walking away, getting smaller and smaller. He was deserting her. He wasn't going to stand by her at school. He wasn't going to smooth the way for her. He was going to be on the other side with all of them, looking down on her, telling everyone that she was too young to be a part of the crowd, telling everyone that she didn't belong. "Fine for you, Evan Tresky," she said as she marched into the house, her fists balled up at her sides. "I don't need you. I don't need you to have fun. I don't need you to make a lemonade stand, and I don't need you to make friends in the 4th grade." Halfway up the stairs, she stopped and shouted, "And I am not a baby." Okay, we're on chapter 3. It's called Joint Venture. And the vocabulary word at the beginning of this chapter is joint venture. It means 2 or more people joining forces to sell a certain amount of goods or to do work on a single project. When the goods are sold or the project is finished, the joint venture ends. And here we go. "Your sister is really..." "Shut up," said Evan. "Huh? Just shut up. She's okay. She doesn't look. She's okay, so just shut up." "Yeah, okay," said Scott, holding up his free hand to show he meant peace. Evan was getting abused on both sides. The heavy cooler was banging against his inside leg with every step. The plastic chairs were scraping against his outside leg. Bruised and bloodied, he thought to himself, all for the fun of hanging out with Scott Spencer. Why couldn't Jack have been home, or Ryan? And why did Adam have to go be on the Cape this week? It stunk. "How far are we walking?" grunted Scott. "Just to the corner." Evan watched as drops of sweat fell off his face and landed on the hot sidewalk. "We should have stayed in the driveway. It was shaded." "The corner's better, trust me," said Evan. He remembered when Jessie had said the same words to him last summer. They were setting up a lemonade stand together, and Evan had been grumbling about dragging the cooler across the street and down 2 houses, just like Scott. But Jessie had insisted. "There's a sidewalk on this side," she said, "so we'll get the foot traffic coming in both directions. And the people in cars coming around the curve will have time to see us and slow down. Besides, there are a bunch of little kids on this side street, and their mothers won't want them crossing Damon Road. The corner's better, trust me." And she was right. They made a ton of money that afternoon. It took 10 seconds to set up the lemonade stand. Evan unfolded the chairs and set one on each side of the cooler. Scott tilted the sign toward the street for maximum effect. Then they both sat down. "Man, it's hot," Evan said. He took off his baseball cap and wiped the sweat from his face with his shirt. Then he grabbed an ice cube from the cooler, bounced it on his head, and stuck his cap back on. "Yeah," said Scott, "I'm thirsty." He reached into the paper bag and pulled out a cup. It was one of those large red plastic cups that vendors use at professional baseball games. Then Scott took one of the pitchers from the cooler and filled it up with lemonade. "Hey, not so much," Evan said, pouring himself a cup too, but only part way. He glugged down half his drink. Not bad, he thought, though he noticed a dead fruit fly floating on the top. His mom had been battling a mad fruit fly infestation ever since the weather had turned really warm. The kitchen sink area where they kept their fruit bowl was dotted with tiny, feathery fruit fly corpses. And I'm going to have to stop there for today. Make sure you work on your Imagine Math lessons, and I know that you guys will be the champions. See you tomorrow. Bye.